Blackwater Ben by William Durbin, Chapter 17. The Skyhook. Over the next few days, Ben found out more about his mother from Charlie. He learned that her favorite color was green, so was Ben's, and that she loved rainstorms. Ben didn't. And lemon meringue pie, a match again. One of her favorite books was Walden. Charlie explained that it was by Thoreau, a fellow he had mentioned once before who had loved nature so much that he'd built a little cabin in the woods and lived there all by himself. She also likes a story called Le Morte d'Arthur, which didn't sound good until Charlie told him it was about King Arthur and his knights. The problem was every time the dentist started a good story, Ben got called back to the cook shack. Even with Never's help, there were so many new Jacks arriving in the camp that the kitchen crew scrambled to keep up. Luckily, Ben was getting faster at his potato peeling, thanks to the tater races he and Nevers were having. Nevers usually won their one potato duels, but when it came to endurance peeling, doing a whole pan at a time, Ben came out on top as often as Nevers did. Despite Nevers' quickness in the kitchen, he often got in trouble for not keeping track of supplies. Pa had a paper stuck on the wall, and the cookies were supposed to mark down items we were low. But because Nevers couldn't write, he had to ask Ben to do his recording. Whenever there was a mistake, Pa knew where to turn. "How come this lard can is near empty?" he once said, looking straight at Nevers. "And I don't see a note on our order list." "I'll take care of it, Pa," Ben said. If they weren't in too big of a hurry, Ben showed Nevers how to write simple words like salt and pork. But when it came to rutabagas and molasses, Ben had enough trouble spelling those on his own. "Thanks, Ben," Nevers said after he printed out oleo for the first time. "You're a good teacher." "Don't call me that," Ben said, shivering at the thought of being compared to the helmet-haired, ruler-wielding Miss Stanish. All of the new arrivals, the Jacks who impressed Ben the most was Percy Cantwell. Cantwell was a lanky top-loader, known as Slim. Though some of the fellows called him Skyhook, Slim had cool gray eyes, and he didn't joke around like other fellows. When Ben and Wendy asked Slim why he never strung more than a half dozen words together, Wendy said, "Slim is one Jack who lets his loading do his talking." It takes a special touch to top off a sled that's decked out with 20,000 feet of wood. No matter how cold it gets, Slim wore a short jacket. His stage pants had been cut off above the ankles so the cuffs couldn't trip him, and his leather boots were fitted with a low lumberman's overshoes for good traction. Slim preferred a Stetson hat over the usual wool cap. The first time Ben saw Slim at work, he understood that what Wendy meant about Slim's loading doing his talking. The crew hadn't moved a stick of timber to the landing yet, and Ben knew that if the logs couldn't be floated downstream in the spring, the company wouldn't get paid. But once Ben saw Slim working on the load, he knew it would be a cinch for them to make their contract. Ben had just pulled up to the cut, but nobody noticed him. Since the Jacks normally ran the minute they saw the lunch sled, Ben thought something was wrong. Then he saw that everyone was sitting there watching Slim. When Ben climbed down, Ed Day pointed at the loading crew. The groundhogs are sending a blue butt up to the Skyhook. Ben knew that the groundhogs, or sending up men, were fellows who guided the logs up the skid poles that leaned against the sled. He asked Day, "What's a blue butt?" "A log with a big bell," Day said. "Taper makes them tough to control. Some call them big blues. They can be 2-ton killers if you don't know your stuff." Slim was straddling the top of the 2-story tall load. Logging sleds were dangerous because the logs were held in place only with corner binds and wrapper chains. The whole load could be dumped by two men hammering loose the fid hooks, U-shaped pieces of iron that held the chains. Slim was about to top off the load with a monster log. The groundhogs had wrapped a rope around the blue butt, and the cross-haul teamster was ready to pull from the other side. At the signal from Slim, the teamster started his horses. As the log rolled up the skids, the groundhogs guided each end while Slim stood on top with his cant hook in his hand and his pipe jutting out of his mouth. "He's always got that stub pipe between his teeth," Day said. "You can tell how hard he's concentrating by the angle of the pipe stem." Ben figured this must be a tricky load, for as the log shot up the skids, Slim's jaw tightened and his pipe stood straight up. "Saginaw," Slim hollered from between his clenched teeth. "What's that mean?" Ben asked. "They need to slow down the small end of the log. But Slim says, St. Croix, it's time to speed her up." The icy bark crackled as the log climbed the skid poles. It was traveling so fast that as it that it looked like it would shoot over the top and crush Slim. But just when Ben was ready to haul or jump, Slim cut the log free, dancing aside. He buried his cant hook in the butt end and gave the log a quarter turn. The momentum was perfect. The blue butt settled on top of the load with a resounding thunk. Ben heard the same whenever he watched cabin builders roll a perfectly scribed log into place. As flecks of bark and ice fell to the ground, the Jacks nodded their approval. I don't think we'll need to chain this one down tall, Slim said, walking the length of the massive log to test its balance. Slim's pipe was back at horizontal, and he wore a hint of a smile. Slim took his pipe out of his mouth and pointed to Ben. Now that cookie's here, we better take ourselves a lunch break.